Hey guys, welcome back to the next part of our series. Today we're going to continue with the Vampire Kobold, hopefully finish the piece, and we're going to be ready to jump onto the next project this week. So let's get to it. This is where we left off. I added a little bit of a Polypaint touch here, but we're going to get rid of this actually. I'm just going to turn Polypaint off by turning this little brush icon off. And before we jump into Polypaint, in order to get the best out of Polypaint, we need to get some high frequency detail. So anytime we are working with very fine detail, we need a lot of geometry. So I'm gonna divide the character once more. I'm at 4 million polygons. I think that's good enough. And I'm gonna start adding a little bit of like definition all around. Now, kobold creatures are supposed to be, again, this sort of like lizard, vermin kind of thing. So I'm gonna go with like a leathery skin. I'm gonna go into the light box and we're gonna just the basic alphas here. So let me go for my leathery skin and 99, this one right here. This one's really good. As you can see, we get a very nice texture on the character. If we change this to drag rect and we drag on top of the character, change this to C sub as well. Let me just modify my pen a little bit. There we go. We're gonna get this, right? So as you can see, the only issue here is that it's way too deep, right? So I'm gonna lower the intensity and I'm gonna use a little bit of a trick that I really like, which is I'm gonna change this to a spray. Now what this will do is it will just give me noise. All throughout the surface we'll just get this very nice noise. Now if I were to divide this once more, and you can if you want to, it's just going to be like really heavy, we're going to get like a very defined look of like leathery skin here. The only issue with this is now we're working with very high levels of polygons, so you might see a little bit of a hit on your computer's performance, which is again completely normal and completely expected. This effect that I'm doing here is what we call a tertiary detail or microsurface. Nowadays, especially for video game production, or especially the way I do my characters for video games, I wait until I'm in Substance to actually do this step, because by doing that, or by waiting until I'm in Substance, I can work with the amount of detail that the character is gonna eventually have on the texture map, right? Because, of course, right now this looks very cool, but if we were to bring this into a game, we can't just have like a 16K map texture. Like it's just not possible. Even if we were doing this for like, let's say 3D printing, doing this super fine detail, it's really not gonna do that much of a difference, or it's not gonna make a difference unless we were printing this like a really big scale. At the scale that you normally do for tabletop, like you wouldn't even see this. That's why most of the sculptures that you see for 3D printing, they're not as defined as this. Now what I am gonna do is I'm gonna change this back to drag rect. I'm going to increase the intensity a little bit. I'm going to start adding a couple of extra, maybe not that much. Let's go a little bit lower, like here, probably. And I'm going to start adding some deeper ones, like here on the neck, or a little bit more. There we go. Following like the direction of the element. So having a couple of like very intense ones every now and then, or in certain areas that are a little bit more intense, that's going to really help the whole thing. And this very intense wrinkles, they're also going to help me with the Polypaint in just a couple of moments when we're going to start adding a little bit more texture. There's a very nice one here. Everyone uses it, this leathery skin that's like an eye shape, because you can just like project it on the eye and you're going to get this very nice sharp like wrinkles surrounding the eye. So it's always a very nice tool there. I sometimes use it in other places, like you don't only need to use it there. Let me go back to the leathery skin here. Add a couple of more details here, hair, up here on the eyebrow. Like again, you want to add details in such a way that it makes a character pop a little bit more, but you don't want to overdo it. That's one of the issues or mistakes that I see people make. They will go and really like crank up the details, thinking that's gonna save them. And the reality of things is that details in the sculptures, they're like the toppings on a cake, right? So you can of course have cakes that look very nice, very pretty, but if the bread inside, if the fillings are horrible, then it doesn't matter how nice your toppings are. It's a bad cake, right? So the same happens, or the same applies for sculptures. You can have a very defined and detailed character with a lot of with a lot of wrinkles and pores and stuff. But if the forms, if the volumes, if the proportions, if all of the other elements of the character are not there, it really doesn't matter how much elements you add on top. It's still gonna look very bad. A teacher of mine had a saying, I'm not gonna repeat it here because we wanna keep it friendly, but it pretty much said, if your sculpture sucks, it doesn't matter how much you polish it, it's still gonna suck. So again, there's other ways to say that, but not gonna say it here in YouTube. So yeah, I'm just adding this sort of like noise texture pretty much everywhere, as you can see here, just to break the softness of the normal like colors that we have, or the surface of the character. Like we want to break the surface of the character, and then we can change back to like drag rect, and we can start dragging and adding some extra definition in a couple of areas, not everywhere. Again, we want to make sure that this thing feels natural. So for instance, there on the folds, maybe a little bit here. This one's I'm actually gonna make them go like down like this, just to add a little bit of texture there. Here, for instance. And even though we're in a very high subdivision level, that doesn't mean that we can't go back and add just like traditional wrinkles with my what's the word, my Damien standard. Those are the kind of wrinkles that you're never going to be able to get with just alphas. So adding this sort of like textury, leathery feel to the whole character, you can still do this with the traditional like Damien standard. I'm also going to go with clay buildup, change this to like a round small alpha, and just like a couple of like fibers going in and out. I don't want to smooth that much, and it's also going to be a little bit difficult to smooth at this point because we have so many polygons. But yeah, this is gonna work. So for instance, here on this fold, let's just make it a little bit more intense here. Same here, for instance, we can add like a couple of like fat folds there, like over here on the arm, just a little bit of an extra indentation or something. We could go with the clay buildup, and remember the veins that we did on the arm. Let's do a couple of them on the hand. Just a little bit of texture, see? No, I'm not going into like medical books and doing like reference and stuff. It's just some texture that I want on the arms. There we go. On the inside of the arms, we don't have that much detail, so let's go with our standard brush again with this guy, and we can start adding like the kind of like the leathery grip areas that this guy would have. So there we go. There we go. That's looking good. Now I want to go with my Damien standard brush again. I'm going to change this to a alpha 23, which is this sort of like dots, and I just want to change this to a positive. Probably change the alpha. Let's change this to spray, and I just want to add like a couple of like noise here on the shoulders, because I don't want this scales that we have to be like completely uniform. I want to have a little bit of texture. Just a little bit of texture here and there. I'm also going to use this trick for the tongue. So let me isolate the tongue real quick. Control D a couple of times, and see how we get this very nice like textury effect on the tongue. Very simple. And there we go. What else can we do? Let's go back here. Let's do a couple more wrinkles here on this area. Usually I like exaggerating the wrinkles, especially on the eyes. Those are some of the wrinkles that people really like to see and to paint. So by pushing this guy a little bit harder, we're going to be able to get that. And there we go. So our kobold is ready in regards to the the general like sorry, the general sculpture. I would say this is a very nice sculpture. We're gonna be posting this guy as well in this video, so just hang on tight and you'll get to that part. Yeah, so now let's go into Polypaint. So what is Polypaint? Polypaint is a way in which we can add color to our character, like what I did right here. And even though it doesn't work in the same way as the way it would work in Substance Painter, for instance, where we can change the properties of the material, we can still get something nice looking, or something looking nice. So I'm gonna go here into material. I'm gonna select a white color. I'm gonna turn on mRGB, and I'm gonna go to my standard brush. And my standard brush, I'm gonna change the stroke to color spray. I'm gonna change the alpha to this alpha 23, and this pretty much converts the standard brush into a sort of airbrush. So we're gonna get a very nice soft texture all around. So I'm gonna go into color and I'm gonna say fill object. This will fill the object with white completely, since we have the mRGB intensity set to 100 again. So color, fill object, there we go. And now we can start selecting a color. So I'm gonna go for like a dark red here. And we can start painting the character. So I'm gonna go with like a low intensity, let's say like a 50 intensity. I'm gonna say color, fill object. Let's do one more and one more. There we go. And I wanna use this as a base. Right, so this is going to be the base of my character, and the way I'm going to approach this is a very nice technique in which we utilize primary colors, yellow, red, and blue, to accentuate or break up the colors of our character. So for instance, I'm going to start with a brighter red like this one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start painting this brighter red in all the areas. By the way, make sure you turn off CAD. We only want RGB turn on. Let's go 100 intensity. And very softly, I'm going to start painting, for instance, all the areas where I see muscles, right? So wherever you see like a big muscle, like the abdominal muscle, a little bit of the rib cage here, the belly, the quadriceps, any area that there in which you would find high blood flow, you're going to add a little bit of red, okay? Because those are areas that are going to be irrigated quite a bit. So for instance, the arms right here, the forearms, on the other side as well. So any place we see the like this big muscles or big muscle volumes, we're gonna be adding this. Now make sure not to overdo it. You can see there I press too heavily and the color goes like completely saturated. We don't want that. We want to keep it soft. So by using our Wacomb's pressure, you're gonna be able to control the flow a little bit better. In the case of the tail, that's fine. I'm gonna go outside. So I'm gonna keep the outside of the tail a little bit warmer. Like the tricep there is warm, the shoulder. So we can think about this process as painting temperature, right? We're painting or adding color, red color, to all the areas where we would expect there to be warmth. So the nose, of course, the snout, a little bit on the eyes, the mouth, the muscles here on the neck itself. So all the places where we would expect there to be like high blood flow, we're gonna add this reddish color. And then I usually add a little bit of red pretty much everywhere, just to make sure that there's something, a little bit of red, again, pretty much everywhere. So I'm just gonna start moving this thing around. Just adding a little bit of red. We of course are gonna have a little bit more saturation in certain areas, but we wanna have blood flow everywhere, right? So there we go. So that's the reds. Reds are going to go any place where you have high circulation. In the case of humans, for instance, nose, ears, eyelids, the lips, like all of the areas where you would have a lot of blood, that's where you want to have more red. Then we're going to jump onto the yellow. And yellow, I like to go for this sort of like mustard color. I don't usually go super saturated, so something like this. And yellow is going to be every place or any place where you're going to find cartilage, bones, and fat. So for instance, the rib cage right here, the sternum, a little bit of the ribs here, rib cage border there, the pelvis, a little bit of the genitals, the knees, the elbows back here, the tendon of the tricep, for instance, all the skeleton here, the skull, sorry, all the skull, the jaw. And as you can see, I'm also not like pushing this color like super intense. Here, the zygomatic arch, the horns, or the little like horn ears thingies, the scapula. Sorry, the backbones right here. There we go. We know that this bone goes all the way to the little thing right there. Fingers tend to be really, really like bony, so I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow there. There we go. I'm gonna use the bottom side of the tail. I'm gonna paint it yellow. The feet. We're gonna add this yellow pretty much everywhere here on the feet. And we're just gonna start painting the whole character in this way. There we go. Cool. Whoop. A little bit more here, the tendon of the bicep. So see how it kind of looks like the Attack on Titan Titans, right? Like this sort of like naked, like if we were dissecting the character, this is where we would see the sort of like changing values depending on what we're looking at. And that's fine. I actually call this face the clown face because it kind of resembles a clown as well. Finally, we're gonna go for the blue colors. And for the blue colors, we're gonna go into the crevices. Any place where you have like a crevice or a pit or a sort of like a place where light has a little bit of an issue getting into, you're usually gonna get this sort of like blue color. So for instance, on the eyes there, we're gonna get a little bit on the nose. It's very common that things are gonna start looking very wonky. That's completely normal because I'm gonna be showing you another trick soon enough that's gonna give us a little bit more variance. Again, this is not a process that I use or do much nowadays. I follow this exact same process, but we do it in a slightly different manner inside of Substance Painter. You can check out the, what was it? I think in the Soldier one and in the Demon tutorial that we have, we talk about those methods for painting skin, realistic skin. So those are great if you want to check them out. A little bit of self-promotion there. And we're just gonna push this here, right? There we go. Crevice, a bit of crevice there, crevice. So as you can see, we're getting this very nice looking character with a lot of break. Now, on the teacher that taught me this method mentioned that one thing that we could do was break up the colors by adding a white sort of breaking layer. I don't like that much, the way that results or the effect that gets. I'm going to show you real quick how he did that. We would go for the color spray and we would change this to like alpha 22, which is this like crackling effect, and we'll go for like a light color and lower the RGB intensity quite a bit. And then we'd go by going into like a larger or a bigger brush, we would see like tone down the saturation and kind of like unify the colors. I personally don't like the effect that much because I think we do remove a little bit of the contrastiness or the saturation of the character. But if you want to give it a go, it's a good option. I mean, especially if in areas where you might have gone a little bit crazy and the colors might be way too saturated, it might be a good idea to kind of like blend things together, as you can see right there. But now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try and find the same color. Usually on the soles of the feet, you're gonna find the original color. And we can push it to the color that we're going for, which is like this, a little bit of a saturated red. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the intensity to like at 10%. I'm going to go into color, and I'm going to start filling the object until we get back that like overall red without erasing the colors that we have. So something like this, I think works fine, because now we have this very nice saturated red all around the character, but we keep some of those yellows, some of those blues kind of like intertwined with the different layers of color. This is one of the disadvantages of working with Polypaint inside of Zbrush. Unfortunately, there are no layers, so it's very difficult to kind of like blend them together. If you mess up, you have to like redo it. In Substance, since we can use layers, it's a little bit easier to control, but that doesn't mean that we can't do it right here. So this one works well. I'm gonna go for like now for the belly color, which is gonna be this saturated like cream color, low intensity on the RGB. Change this color spray again to alpha 23, which is going to give us this sort of like dots look. Going to keep the brush small because I want the colors to be a little bit smaller. And very, very lightly, I'm going to start lightening up the this part here of the character. So going from the bottom of the neck and a little bit of the chin maybe. We're gonna start lining up this element. See how we're not losing all of the color? We wanna keep those reds, we wanna keep those blues, those yellows. And we're gonna bring them back actually. Like I'm gonna show you a couple of techniques in just a second that are gonna allow us to bring some of that information back. But it's important that this becomes sort of like a building process, right? We don't want to rush this and make it seem like that we're overriding everything that we did before. We don't want to go with super solid colors. So I'm going to keep this going down here all the way to the tail. And this sort of approach to having like a lighter chest, that's something that happens very, very commonly in the animal kingdom. So for instance, if you take a look at a tiger, tigers have that. They have this very nice, of course, pattern all around their bodies, but their belly, it's light, right? So why? Because the thing that's going to hide them the most is going to be on top, right? They're going to be like sneaking around and stuff. And this, it doesn't need to be that important. Other animals, such as like, I don't know, like a frog. Frogs usually use this as a sort of mating, getting attention to them pattern. So it's very, very common in the animal kingdom and in creature design to have like a lighter tone on front and then a darker tone on the back. So if you're ever hesitant about how to apply colors, going with this technique, like light color on the front, dark color on the back, it's always a good one. Now for that same reason, I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna sample this red color. I'm gonna go a little bit darker. Never go full, like completely dark here, because if you go there, you don't have any more ways to push the contrast. So we never go to the extremes of the square. We always keep it either on this side or on this side. Same with the whites. Like I'm never gonna go like full white, because that's gonna bring problems to the contrast later on. And I'm gonna use this dark color, probably a little bit of a bigger brush, to add some darkness on the back here. So I'm just darkening the whole thing first. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this color spray to a drag rect, and I'm gonna start dragging. Let's increase the RGB intensity. I'm gonna start dragging some spots right here. This is gonna create a little bit of texture as well, which is always appreciated, right? So the scales are gonna be like they're gonna have a little bit of effect there. So going all the way over here, like on the tail, make sure, and we talked about this when we were talking about details, make sure we fade the details. So if we start with big dots right there, dots are gonna become smaller and smaller and smaller, and maybe eventually there's not gonna be any more dots here on the tail, right? So for instance, here we can go with very, very small dots, and things are just gonna start fading out. Because with animals, it happens very frequently as well. The patterns are just gonna like transition into other parts of the skin of the character or of the creature, and you're not gonna see just like a complete like random stuff. You're not gonna have like a huge dot right there and then it just stops. There's always this sort of fade. Fades are always really, really good. So we're just gonna keep pushing here, add a little bit of extra details here on top, and there we go. Perfect. So let's add a couple of extra dots and elements over here. There we go. And we're just gonna continue. Cool. So now guys, I'm gonna show you a couple of techniques that we can do here with the skin to bring back a little bit of those like elements. Remember the blue thing that we have in the crevices, the white thing that we had on top. This is sort of like using the generators in Substance, where we go into the crevices or go into the high points to elevate or to push them out or in to give a little bit more depth to the whole piece. So I'm gonna go all the way to masking, and I'm gonna go into mask by cavity right here. And if I hit mask by cavity, what's gonna happen? Zbrush is gonna analyze my creature, and as you can see, it's gonna try to mask out any cavity that we have. Now we can change the cavity profile. Like if we reduce how big the cavity is gonna be, the mask is gonna be a little bit bigger because it's gonna find a little bit more information like this. So you can see that the mask goes bigger and bigger. So something like that I think works well. I'm gonna invert the mask so that now the crevices are unmasked, And then using this dark color and a low RGB intensity, I'm gonna say color, fill object. Probably 2 times. Now what that will do, as you can see, is it will fill those crevices with a little bit of that dark tone, and that way we're gonna get a little bit more contrast pretty much everywhere. A very cool way in which you can check whether or not this is working properly is by going into the material and changing this to a flat color. You also need to actually fill the character because we fill with mRGB. So I would need to turn this, I'm gonna say just M, and just gonna say color, fill object. And now, see that? That's what we have on the texture. Okay? I'm just gonna Control C there. We're gonna go back to our color. So that's it for the body, I would say. The nose, of course, the nose. We're missing the nose. And the gums. Yeah, what am I thinking? We're still missing a couple of things. So this is the point where I would start focusing on all the other parts of the character. So I'm gonna isolate everything so that we're only focusing on the character here. Let's go to the nose. Let's grab this dark color. Let's change this to color spray as well. One of the things about color spray is I'm using this color variance. So it varies the colors. It's not pure like brown. It gives us a little bit of variance here and there. And that's always good. You can increase, of course, that color variance, but don't go too high because then you're going to start getting other colors that are not what you're going for. Let's change this back to RGB. And we just start filling the nose there. And again, fade, 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 so that we have a nice transition into the rest of the elements. Like we don't want things to just like end and that's it, right? We want things to have a nice, smooth transition. Now I'm gonna go for like a pink color, like a desaturated, like lavender kind of color right there. And we're gonna use this for the gums. I don't want to go for like a super bright pink because that would mean that the gums are healthy. And this is supposed to be a vampire, so he must have some sort of like problem, right? So I'm gonna fill the whole mouth and all the gums right here. That's why I had to turn off the tongue and everything else, so that it's a little bit easier to work on all of this area. There we go. Now we can do the same way airbrush artists do. We can just now go for like a darker color, like a darker pink. And hit a little bit, a couple of areas here on the shadows, and we're pretty much painting the light and shadows of our object. So you're welcome to do that. You can even go for like a really bright one, and if we decrease the intensity here and maybe the size, we could add like a couple of lines there to bring a little bit of light into certain areas of the gums. So if you have experience, I don't know, like tattooing or painting or drawing, this is something that you've probably done with like markers or acrylic paint or something, and it's the same process. We pretty much follow the same process to get a very nice result here. Let's go for the tongue now, since we're working on the pinks. So let's turn the tongue on. Turn this guy on as well. There we go. I am gonna sample. I'm probably gonna go for like a darker, like a dark red, like pinkish, but not so pinkish. Yeah, something like this, I think. There we go. So I'm just gonna say with RGB intensity set to 100, color, fill object. And now what I should do is just add a little bit of contrast. So I'm gonna go with like a darker pink here. And I'm just gonna start painting. Again, lower the intensity, make the brush slightly bigger, and very, very softly just add a little bit of variance in certain areas of the tongue. There we go. For the fangs, we're gonna do something interesting here. So we're gonna go for this sort of like ivory color, something like this. I think works fine. Same deal. I definitely need to give them a couple of divisions to make them a little bit rounder, sharper. And I'm gonna say color, fill object as well with RGB intensity set to 100. And now I'm gonna change this to a soft brush, so freehand and probably alpha 1. I'm gonna go for like a dark, very dark brown. And I'm just gonna start adding a little bit of like a gradient here on the top of the teeth, like this. It's gonna make them pop a little bit more, give them, it's a sort of like painting a shadow, right? And that's why we needed like a soft brush, because otherwise it would have been difficult to create this effect. And then we're gonna do the same thing, but with a very bright white, not completely white, because again we want to keep that for other things. But we can just highlight some of the fangs. And we're gonna create a nice gradient there. It's gonna paint our fangs in a very cool fashion. For the we're gonna do the same thing for the nails, for the rest of the bony things. So again, we're gonna go for like this ivory color fill object, and then we're gonna go for like a dark brown color. Probably make the draw size bigger. Just paint the union so we get this nice gradient there. Same for the fingers. Again, don't go super crazy, it's just supposed to be just like a little bit of a shadow there. There we go. And now if we want to, we can go with the whites and a little bit of a highlight. I'm probably just gonna add the highlight on the feet because the fingers are way too small, so it really doesn't matter. I did notice there's a couple of issues here on the fingers. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump back to the body. I'm gonna press Shift D to go into lower subdivision levels, and then with my move brush, I'm just gonna move the fingers around a little bit so that we don't have that much of an overlap there. Even if the fingers become like wider or broader at the end, that's fine. Now we can press D to jump back into the higher subdivision levels and make sure that fix is working. It looks like it is, so we're in a good shape right there. What else are we missing? The eyes, right? Now for the eyes, actually, that's actually not that difficult. I mean, we can keep the eyes with the material that they had, and I think that looks good. I am gonna add a little bit of details now, where we can go into the final stages before we pose the character and go into the render, and we can add a couple of details to the character. So this is supposed to be a vampire, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go with like a very bright dark red here, and using again our standard brush with the paint brush here with a very small alpha, I'm gonna paint his mouth, or actually I need to paint the teeth first, as if he just consumed blood, right? He just bit someone. There we go. Let's go now to the character, and following that effect, we of course need to add a little bit of blood here, a little bit of blood here. That's gonna override the colors, of course. Let's add like a splatter here. And that looks a little bit weird, and that's because of the color variance. Remember we talked about that one. So I'm gonna lower the color variance there. I'm actually gonna break symmetry here because I want this splash of like red to be a little bit asymmetrical. Actually, I think I'm gonna get rid of the one on the chest. I like the one on the teeth and on the mouth, but I think the chest is overdoing it. The tongue definitely needs to have a little bit of blood in it, and probably a little bit of blood here in the mouth, just like painting some areas. There we go. So that, I think that looks good. I think we're in a good position now. Oh wait, let me go back. There we go. Let me repaint a little bit here. Cool. Now I'm gonna do one final pass here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go for this like light color. I'm gonna go a little bit lighter, and I'm gonna go for a very soft brush. So again, freehand and alpha, and I just want to push a couple of things. So for instance, see how we're losing a lot of definition here? So I'm just gonna like pretty much manually bring a little bit of light to certain areas of the character. It's kind of like doing makeup and using like a highlighter or something. It's just to push some of the areas out and make sure that the character is not lost on all of the tones that we have there. Not super intense. That was a little bit too much there, for instance. It's just a little bit of a touch here and there. like on the shoulders, a little bit here on the back. It's just like adding a little bit of light going into the character. Same thing here, for instance. See how we're not overriding any of the colors. We're just adding that effect. And if I feel like by any reason I went a little bit too crazy, that's fine. We can just go back here, reselect that dark color that we had, and repaint a little bit of those effects. I think that he looks menacing. I'm not sure about the dark nose though. I think I kind of like the red nose. Or maybe not that dark, probably something like this. Something like that looks good. What do you guys think? He looks scary? I think he does. Cool. So now let's save this real quick. And we're going to be posting this character, and then I'm going to be taking him into Marmoset. We're going to do a quick render. I want to show you how you can utilize Marmoset. Some people have, what's the word? This other thing, the... what's the name of this render? Keyshot. They have the Keyshot bridge. I personally don't use Keyshot. I'm more used to the whole production pipeline, so I go into Maya, no RenderMan. What others have I used? Redshift, Unreal, Unity. So I don't use Keyshot. However, I do know that it's very cool. And one of the cool things about Keyshot is that all the Polypaint information can go into that element. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and say all low to all the subtools. Let's delete the subtools that we don't need. For some reason, it seems like I duplicated the tongue. Let's delete one of them. Let's delete the ground for now. And by having all the subtools set to low, I'm going to go into C plugin, and I'm going to say UV master, and I'm going to say unwrap all. And what that will do is it will go into all the different subtools, and it will unwrap them so that we can have a UV. It's not going to be a perfect UV, but it's going to be, or should be usable, which is what we're going for. So that was the, like the fangs and the nails. You can see the teeth there. So it's doing all the unwrap for all the different pieces. Now, when we export, we're going to be able to export textures as well, and we're going to be able to connect things, which hopefully won't take us that long. So let's give it a go. Let's just give it 1 second here for Zbrush to think. Hopefully we don't get a crash. We're recording this completely like just one shot. We're not cutting or editing anything. Sometimes I pause, but it's always just one continuous shot. So let's give it 1 more second. Okay, I'm gonna pause. I know I said that we do this like completely straight. I'm just gonna pause real quick, wait for this to finish, and we continue. It's gonna be just a quick bump for you. Okay, so the software did crash, so I'm just gonna go back here. I'm just gonna do this guy first. So I'm gonna go all the way down to the character, go in C plugin. I'm gonna say UV master, and we're gonna say unwrap, and I'm just gonna wrapping this guy right now. I think it crashed with the nails. Maybe there's some like bad topology or something, because those were Dynamesh, and maybe there's like an N-gun, and that sometimes messes up things. But now if I go here into UV map and I say morph UV, we're gonna see the UV map for the Cobalt. Which again, not perfect. It goes straight through the middle. There's not a lot of space being used properly, but for what we're doing here, for just like a quick render, we're gonna be just fine. So now posing, let's pose this character. So what I'm gonna do is the following. I'm actually gonna stay at the lowest subdivision, and we need to think about a pose. We're gonna go for a simple pose. I'm not gonna go too complicated here. I'm gonna add a square, or a cube, sorry. If I wanted to pose this character like properly, I would just rig it, even without controllers, just like bones. It's not that difficult, and you get some very nice results. So what I want to do is I want to bring the whole character down, and for this I'm actually going to use another what's the word? Plugin. So I'm going to go here all low, and I'm going to go C plugin, and I'm going to use this one called Transpose Master. So what Transpose Master does, by clicking T-Pose Mesh, it's going to create a proxy of your character. We're going to pose this character, which is just a single element, and then by utilizing this single element, all of the positions for the objects are going to be transferred to the original one. So I am going to select this guy, mask it, and then select this guy, bring it down, because I want this guy to be like a little bit lower, something like this, so that the tail is on the floor. And now I am going to go into my lasso, mask lasso. Let's remove the mask. Let's isolate this guy. I'm gonna mask the left leg here first. Invert the mask. Let's do transparency. Oh, not transparency. I'm gonna mask the. Actually, it might have been a bad idea to bring the. What's the word? The cube in. No, we can just hide this. There we go. Because I want to select the nails there. There we go. So now we invert the mask. Control click. Let's mask a little bit here. Control click on the mask to soften it up a little bit. And I'm going to move the pivot point to a position where I would expect the bone to rotate, which is about here. I'm going to move it forward. Oh, we actually need to select this guy, mask it as well. There we go. So it's a lot of like masking and demasking and stuff. Let's mask a little bit more of the tail. Like that. And I'm just going to move this forward. Probably something like this. See how everything else moves in a very like natural way. And then I'm just going to mask all of this thing all the way to the knee. Move the pivot point right about here. Control click to soften this up a little bit. Oh, there's a couple of like crazy vertices going over there. Even here, let's just mask them out. I'm just going to move this forward a little bit like this. And then I'm just going to grab the next part, which is the heel. Same deal, soften this up a little bit. Move the pivot point to the heel. Move this guy up like this. And then mask this guy right here. Move it to the feet. And land it there. So that way, that feet is now like doing a step forward, right? Which is kind of like what we're going for. I'm gonna mask everything here, like all the character, like the upper part of the character. And I'm gonna position this here on the torso, and since he's moving forward, I wanna move the torso forward slightly like this. Just very slightly, like this. I'm gonna give it a little bit of a bend there. Then for instance, the head. Let's select the head. Move the pivot point to the center of the neck. And we can move the neck slightly. Again, just to break the pose a little bit and get an interesting pose right here. I'm gonna keep the head straight. Now, since this leg is going forward, I would expect this arm to go slightly backward. So I'm gonna again position this right around the shoulder area, right around there. Invert mask. Move the arm backwards. And for instance, we can grab the forearm, including a little bit of that muscle right there. Invert the mask. Move the forearm forward. Let's move it a little bit out like this. The shoulders seem to be doing something a little bit weird, so I'm again gonna grab everything here. Let's reset the pivot point so that it's centered to the world. Smooth that. There we go. That fixes the pose a little bit. And then this arm right here. Smooth out. This one's going to be right there. Let's rotate it forward a little bit. Like this, because this leg is going to be going back. So now let's go for the intense masking here for the leg. So right about there. Yeah, that seems to do it. Invert the mask, invert here. Pivot point, reset again, move it down here to where the hip is. Smooth out this a little bit. And rotate. If you press Control and rotate, things tend to deform a little bit better. So I'm gonna really like push this back like this, as if it was taking a step. And then mask all of this. move this down here to the knee. And I'm gonna just like position the feet like this. Oop. Mask everything all the way here, including the knee. Move this to the ball of the foot, and just push this forward like this. And we got this interesting pose, which again, if we compare it to the initial one, this is the initial T pose, this one right here, which is not bad, by the way. This one right here. But if we compare it to this one, it looks way more interesting, right? Like a little bit more effect. Now, there might be a couple of areas here, for instance, on the abdomen, where things are not looking exactly like how you want due to the deformation. Feel free to use the move brush to just like fix a couple of those areas. That's totally fine. So if you need to resculpt things, I mean, it's completely fine. I'm actually gonna grab the hand here, and to give the hands a little bit more movement, I'm gonna rotate this hand back. And I'm gonna rotate this hand forward. No, actually that one looks good as going like that as well. There we go. So now we have this interesting pose where the kobold is kind of like walking along. If we want to, we can of course like just grab the whole thing and make him go like even further down. But I think this is a good pose for presentation purposes. So now I'm just gonna go into Z plugin and hit T pose to subtool. And what's gonna happen is the subtool master thing is gonna modify or move all of the elements to their respective place right here. So now if I go all high, you're gonna see that we have all the results ready. So let's just give this a second. And there we go. Our little kobold here is ready for a nice render. So I think we're gonna go for like this sort of an angle here. That looks good. Should we do the render in Zbrush or in Marmoset? I think we got enough time to do it in Marmoset, so let's give it a go. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go into Z plugin, and since I wanna keep as much detail as possible, I'm gonna be doing a decimation, but I'm gonna keep the UVs and I'm gonna use and keep the Polypaint for the character, and I'm gonna try to hit this character to 150K. So remember, we're the highest of the vision of the whole thing, and I'm trying to bring almost 18 million polygons down to only 150K points. So that's gonna take a little bit of a while. So I'm gonna pause the video real quick just to make sure that we don't have a lot of dead time right here. And after that, I'll show you how this thing looks. So just one quick jump for you guys. Okay guys, so my computer completely crashed after I was trying to do the 17 million polygons decimation. So don't worry, I'm gonna show you another method. Give me just 1 second. And unfortunately, I lost the posing that we had here, which was working very nice, but well, we're gonna have to work with this. Otherwise, this video is gonna run for 2 hours. Don't worry. We're gonna be talking about posing later on in a different video, and the information is already there. So even though the final render will not have the pose, you already saw the process for it. So what I'm gonna do is I am gonna grab this character here. I'm gonna go to subtool, and if I check on the levels of subdivisions, we have of course the 17 million one. I'm just gonna delete that one. I'm gonna keep this at 4 million polygons, and I'm gonna try and do another decimation, but only at 4 million. And I'm gonna go not as low. I'm gonna go to 250K. Oh, give me just 1 second here. Let me cancel this. I need to make sure that I keep the use and keep Polypaint. So 250K, again, give me just 1 second, quick pause right here, and we're gonna be good to go. Very well, guys. So the character is now fully decimated, and I'm actually gonna do something here. Since this is actually now decimated, and the rest of the tools are actually not that heavy. For instance, the fangs here are pretty simple. Did I not color this, guys? I think I did not. Oh, I did not. Okay, let's color this real quick. So I'm just gonna go here with the basic there. Let's go with the color. There we go. It's actually not that one. For some reason, let's smooth them out. Actually, no, I don't want to smooth them out. They're way too high. There we go. Let's press X, smooth them out. Perfect. Now let's just sample that nice like ivory color. There we go. Color, just fill object. And I'm just gonna grab the red. And remember the standard one that we have is the spray and the Alpha 23, which is the spray as well. And just, whoa, no CAD, RGB. And we just do the blot. That should do. Now, what I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to turn off the character, and I'm going to leave everything else on, all of these elements. And I'm going to say all high, so they're all in the highest level. I'm going to say merge. Where's your merge? Merge visible. And it's going to combine all of this into a single element. And now this, guys, I'm going to try and decimate. So let's do, again, use and keep Polypaint. And let's try to decimate it to 150K, I think should be good. Now, this shouldn't take that long because it's less polygons, but I'm still going to pause this real quick. So sorry for all the jumps in this video. It's just a lot of processing and I don't want to waste all of your time, guys. So just, it's processing right here, so should work. Just a couple more seconds, just a quick jump for you. Perfect. So the decimation is ready. You can see we're at 150K. And what I'm going to say now is I'm going to say append, and I'm going to append the cobalt that we have here. So I'm just going to select the cobalt, go here, I'm going to hit append this guy right here. Now the cobalt with the color is on the character. I do need to change the eyes. Where are the eyes? Right here, right? So I think we can go into subtool or polygroups, auto groups, and select that eye and that eye, invert mask, invert the mask, and I'm gonna say just with like a very bright red color fill object. There we go. So now every single part of our character is decimated and it's all in one single subtool, which is what we want. The final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to say merge down. So there's just one single subtool. That way we don't have to export as many files. So this guy is ready. This guy is actually ready to be 3D printed as well. It's a little bit low on resolution. We can go a little bit higher, but this model could be 3D printed. And I'm just going to go into export and I'm going to make sure that texture is turned on and group is turned off. I'm going to export this object as an OBJ. I'm going to call this Cobalt Body Paint. I'm going to say yes. And now if we go into Marmoset, there's a very nice kind of like hidden function inside of Marmoset. Let me delete this guy. File. I'm going to import the model again. This guy right here. And Marmoset is it's a render engine. It's a small render engine. It's supposed to be for previewing for games, for like Unreal and Unity, but you can do some pretty amazing things in here as well. I have the older version, the 3.08. There's a newer version, 4.03, I believe. I haven't updated yet, but this one will give us just what we need. So I'm gonna go to this new material 1, and I'm gonna assign this material to the character. And I did one change, one very small change on this new material. On the albedo channel, instead of using a diffuse map, I'm going to use the vertex color. And as you can see, now I'm inheriting the Polypaint color from the character, or from the Polypaint, and we're actually seeing it displayed right here. It's not going to be perfect, of course. It's not going to be the same as what we had in Zbrush, but it's going to be good enough to get something cool out of this character. So now one thing we can do is we can control the roughness. I'm going to make this a little bit less shiny, and we can even change this to something like some surface scattering, and make this thing look a little bit more surfacey if you want to give this sort of like a skin effect. I am gonna select the character, add a shadow catcher. I'm gonna select my sky, and I'm gonna change the preset to something a little bit more, you know, interesting, like this abandoned. Actually, no, that one. I really like the Berlin underpass because it's kind of dark. And the way I like to light my scenes is pretty similar to what we saw in the last tutorial, in the grenade one. I like to start really dark here and use my main lights to create the contrast that I'm going for. So let's go for like a very dramatic light right here, like coming from the top. Something like this, I think looks good. Kind of like a Rembrandt shot right here. Let's do a little bit more brightness. I'm gonna lower the distance so that the brightness doesn't go all the way to the ground, or at least not as much. I am gonna change the contact refinement to make it a little bit nicer here. A little bit more brightness, and I want to change the tone to a warmer color. Not super warm because he's already quite warm. Actually, no, let's go for like cool color. There we go. That's gonna give us a little bit more contrast. Then I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna create another light, and that's gonna be my rim light. So let's increase the brightness here. Same deal with the distance. I just want to like barely touch the surface of the character like this. I'm also gonna use contact refinement there to make sure that everything looks very, very nice. And look at this creepy guy. I'm gonna create a new camera, and I'm gonna pilot the camera right here, camera 1. I'm gonna go to the field of view, and I'm gonna change this to let's do like a wide shot, like a 24. Is 24 good, or should we go for like a more traditional portrait shot? Yeah, I think a more traditional portrait shot works best for this guy. Let's go for a 3/4 view. It's a shame that we lost the pose, because that would have been a lot better here. So yeah, we're gonna go for something like this. I think I'm gonna add an extra light, so I'm gonna jump into the main camera so that we don't move the camera that we just set it. And I'm gonna add another light like coming from here. I'm gonna change this to a point light, or an omni light, which is like a light bulb. It adds light pretty much everywhere. And as you can see, I'm using this to give it a little bit of definition to the tongue. Otherwise, it was lost on the shadow. So now we can see a little bit of the tongue. That's great. I'm also gonna do contact refinement, and I'm gonna increase the width here to make the shadows a little bit softer. I can do the same thing for the first light. I can increase the width, and that's gonna make the shadows a little bit softer, which is always good for us. Now I'm gonna go to the render options, and I'm gonna turn on GI, global illumination, to get some nice bounce light pretty much everywhere. I'm gonna decrease the intensity though. It's a little bit too much, so let's go for something like this. That's good. That guy's looking tight. You can see the effect of the skin, like how it becomes a little bit nicer here. You can play around with the translucency. I don't want that much translucency. Not that much scatter depth either. Just a little bit to soften the shadows a little bit and give it a more skin-like effect. We can play again with the roughness depending on how shiny or how like dull we want this character to be. I think something like this looks good. We can add a little bit of fuzz. Fuzz is always interesting. We can change the color if we want, just a little bit. I'm gonna mask it with gloss. There we go. There's also ambient occlusion, which is always good as well, because we're gonna get some extra shadows on the character. We can turn on local reflections. We can turn on internal refractions, even though we don't have a glass. Well, actually, we don't need that one right here. So by turning on pretty much all the settings, we're gonna get a nicer render here. And finally, we are gonna go into our camera, and there's a couple of things we can do. We can do focus, for instance. Let's do a little bit of depth of field. Let's focus the character's head. Should be right about here. Let's get rid of near blur, but I do want to have a little bit of far blur, not that much. I shouldn't be seeing the selection there. Let me turn off the guides. There we go. Go back to camera. We can go for a little bit of contrast. Not that much. Exposure. Oh yeah, that looks good. Hopefully on the video it doesn't look that dark, but this one looks really, really cool. This looks like a video game character. Let's sharpen this. Sharpen is always good because by compressing, we sometimes lose a little bit of detail here and there. I'm gonna turn my camera a little bit so we can see a little bit of both ears. There we go. Grain I don't recommend. It looks very ugly, but vignette is kind of cool. It gives a little bit more contrast to the whole thing. And there we go. Final thing you can do, you can add a turntable here. And if you want, you can get a render out, which is going to make our character look really, really cool. So that's it, guys. Hopefully, if you like this series, I had a lot of fun doing this little character. This is just a 3-hour character, pretty much. I recorded everything. You saw everything. Nothing else was done off time or off camera. So in 3 hours, we were able to sculpt the basic forms, the basic shapes, paint the character, and even get a nice render here. There's a couple of artifacts going on there. I think it's the subsurface, but it makes for an interesting effect. So yeah, after this, last thing we can do, let's find like a nice shot here like this. I'm gonna go in capture. I'm gonna capture an image. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna go into settings, and I want to capture a PSD 16 bits. And let's go a little bit higher. Let's go for like a 2K image. And I don't want transparency, that's fine. So I'm just gonna say capture, image, and open. And that's it. Like, it's a very nice render that you can upload anywhere, to your portfolio, to your Facebook, Instagram, or whatever social network you like to use. And this is it, guys. So it's been a pleasure for me, guys. Please make sure to leave your comments down there if you like the process, if you like all the tools. Let us know what else you want me to explore. I'm gonna continue to do videos. So anything that you might be interested in, I'll be more than happy to take into consideration and do some tutorials for you. We also have all of our premium courses down there on the comment section. So make sure to check them out. We have intro courses for Maya, for Zbrush, Substance Painter, pretty much anything. We're also preparing some very cool new premium courses. So keep logging in and checking what we have here in store for you guys, because it's gonna be very cool. And that's it for me today, and I'll see you back on the next one. Bye bye.